As gamers these days, we are bombarded with choice. With so many new games coming out every day, it can be hard to find one that's worth more than a few hours of your time. All too often, it's a cycle of download, play for a bit, and move on. But every so often, a game comes along that says, "No, I'm something more. This game will excite you, will engage you, most of all, will grip you and won't let go." Ladies and gentlemen, this is my take on Shroud of the Avatar. So for a month or two now, I've been immersing myself in Shroud of the Avatar, the newly released spiritual successor to Ultima Online. It's a medieval fantasy MMORPG by Portalarium, headed up by Richard Garriott. You may remember him from such things as the iconic Ultima series, Tabula Rasa, and being in space. The latest entry into the Ultima series, although not by name since Electronic Arts owns the IP, throws you into the world of New Britannia, sometime after a cataclysm that destroyed the old world. The game takes a lot of nods from its predecessor, but it also stands on its own quite strongly. After a brief tutorial, the game drops you into the world and lets you go. Aside from the odd waypoint marker and quest goal, there isn't much handholding. You're basically left to your own devices. Do you go talk to that NPC over there? Do you wander into the wilderness and pick a fight with something? Do you dive headfirst into that foreboding Tier 5 dungeon? Spoiler alert, don't do that. It's all up to you. Like Ultima Online, the game uses a skill gain by doing system. This means that rather than gathering XP and choosing new skills upon leveling, skills are improved by performing them. The more you perform a certain skill, the more proficient you become. It would seem that you gather a pool of XP from fighting enemies and completing quests, and then this XP is later spent by training skills. It's an interesting system that does seem to work quite well. The game's combat model is very simple. It's much of what you'd expect from a modern MMO. You've got skills on a skill bar at the bottom, you set your target and away you go. Shroud of the Avatar has mixed it up a bit, however, by using an interesting deck system. While you will collect dozens of skills as you play, the hotbar is only 10 skills wide. You can create different hotbar loadouts, or decks, that you can swap between on the fly. Not only does this eliminate some of the clutter that's common to MMOs, but also creates strategic and dynamic combat as you'll be switching between the decks quite a bit, forcing you to think tactically about how you lay each one out. Shroud of the Avatar features a number of beautifully crafted quests and puzzles for the player to discover and solve. This nicely complements the game's system of not labeling every object for you, which forces you to stop and examine things to figure out what you can and can't interact with. This is a feature I've seen in a couple other RPGs that I'm quite glad to see here. It really makes the whole world feel relevant and interesting rather than what I call Baldur's Gate syndrome, in which you run around holding a certain hotkey and every interactive element is highlighted, ruining the immersion. Without giving too much away, I've noticed things in the distance that appeared to be beyond the boundaries of the current zone. I went to explore these secret areas and found an entirely self-contained mystery to solve, complete with clues and puzzles and history. I find that ultimately solving this puzzle to be extremely satisfying. Getting around the world isn't too difficult. The game's fast travel system is reminiscent of Mountain Blade Warband, now you have an overmap with points of interest scattered about, such as towns, dungeons, and adventuring zones. You move your character around this map, approach a point of interest and press E to enter. At this point you'll be brought into the zone, ready to explore. The game also has a fully fleshed out crafting system, everything from tailoring to blacksmithy to alchemy, including all associated prospecting skills such as mining, lumberjacking, field dressing, which is basically skinning animals, and so on. I'm told that all the best gear is crafted rather than looted, which legitimizes the full-time crafter and helps simulate a player-driven economy, which is kind of another nod to the old Ultima Online. Clans, known as guilds in Shroud of the Avatar, work as you might expect in an MMO. Players can gather under a common banner for both strength in numbers and a sense of belonging. The game also has a consensual PvP mode that you can toggle on and off as you like, as well as designated PvP areas. I haven't personally tried the PvP yet, but it's something I'll likely check out in the future. Another key feature that has survived from Ultima Online is player housing. The game has a number of housing plots available throughout the lands that players can own, be they in standard cities or in player-run towns, which through role-playing did exist at Ultima Online but are now properly supported in Shroud of the Avatar. So what do I like and dislike about the game? Well, my biggest concern with Shroud of the Avatar right now is on the technical side of things. The game seems to suffer from some performance issues in the form of occasional hitching and lowered frame rates. In addition, the load times can be pretty intense. It's not unusual for me to wait upwards of a minute or more to load into the next scene. With the amount of scene switching going on in the game, this can add up pretty fast and be pretty frustrating. I feel that this is where most gamers will be put off, and they'll simply discard the game as incomplete or work in progress and move on to a new title. And in my opinion, they wouldn't be wrong to do so. Our time is valuable, and we want to make sure that we spend it on things that we know we'll like. But if you're watching this and you were put off by these technical issues, I'd implore you not to bite the game off just yet. These sorts of issues tend to get worked out over time, and the team over at Portalarium has indicated they're actively working to resolve them. This is why, despite it being my primary concern with the game, I'm actually not all that worried about it. There's so much to experience in Shroud of the Avatar, and it would be a shame to miss out on it because of some early technical problems. My second issue with the game is a bit nitpicky and probably a little controversial: the implementation of player housing. The housing system is one of the selling points of the game, so a new player coming in might wonder, well, how do I get a house? The answer to that question, from what I can tell, is a bit complicated. The short and somewhat cynical answer is you don't. There is a finite amount of housing space available in the game, and most of the housing spots, well, the more desirable ones anyway, have all been taken by the early backers of the game as pledge rewards. So even if you join the game on launch day, as I did, you'll find the vast majority of housing spots, again, the more desirable ones, already taken. At the time of this video, there's still plenty of free spots, but they may not be in a place you particularly like. In other words, you'll probably end up in some player-owned town in the middle of nowhere. A slightly longer and less cynical answer to that question is, okay, you can still get a house, but it's not going to be easy. Your options for attaining your own place in the world, as I understand them, are as follows. 1. You could buy one on Shroud of the Avatar online store, which is starting around $100 US. 2. You could win a plot deed in a raffle that they have occasionally. Tickets for this raffle cost several thousand gold, which is nothing to sneeze at for a new player, and you'll still need to buy an actual house to put on that plot. And 3. You could buy a plot from a player, which is probably very expensive. Granted, I have heard of some veteran players gifting plot deeds to new players, but I wouldn't hold out for that. Once you've obtained your plot, you'll need to start paying property tax on it. The smallest form of lot is called a row lot. As I understand it, it'll run you roughly 500 gold pieces a day, with prices increasing as lot size increases. To give some perspective, I've been playing for about a month now, and it takes me roughly an hour to earn 500 gold, which does not include the daily 500 gold you can earn by speaking with the really creepy Oracle character. Not a huge sum, but it's enough to ensure that only players who play the game regularly will have to keep their houses. So all in all, obtaining a house is possible, but it might feel a bit insurmountable for a new player. It seems to be more of a late endgame thing for more experienced players, or for those who don't mind parting with a few bucks. One thing to remember though, as awesome as it would be to have a house in this game, Shroud of the Avatar was made possible by crowdfunding. Housing was one of the pledge rewards. It was not totally unreasonable that the people who made this game possible get to enjoy one of the more coveted perks. So what do I like about Shroud of the Avatar? Honestly, a lot. My favorite thing about this game, and I think one of the first things a new player coming in will notice, is the absolutely fantastic world building, which lends itself to an incredible sense of exploration. Tremendous effort has been put into meticulously crafting some of those beautiful environments I've ever seen in a video game. But don't take my word for it. Have a look. Shroud of the Avatar is gorgeous. From the sprawling landscapes to the beautiful city scenes, right down to the dark, foreboding dungeons. The environments in this game will leave you breathless. But it's not just the physical landscapes themselves, but the interactivity found within them. Being an Ultima game in spirit, Shroud of the Avatar is full of challenging puzzles and interesting secrets to be discovered. It's the kind of game that genuinely rewards exploration. What's behind that hut? Oh, a treasure chest. Or what's that shiny thing on the ground over there? Oh, it's a key, I wonder what it's for, and so on. The game constantly keeps you engaged and keenly aware of your surroundings. It lacks the system that I call Baldur's Gate syndrome, where you can just hold down a button to see object handles or highlights on interactive elements. I've never liked these types of systems because in my opinion it removes a lot of the immersion. Rather than examining your surroundings, you just hold down a button and can immediately see the relevant objects in a room. Shroud of the Avatar has none of that, which makes the environments feel more organic and alive, as any element you see could be important. For example, I was exploring a zone and saw something off in the distance. On the zone's minimap, the object wasn't shown. In fact, according to the map, the tree line was the edge of the zone, but this object was much further out. Can I actually go there, I thought? Is that just background scenery, or is this some kind of secret? Turns out I could go there, and what I found was an extremely interesting subzone consisting of its own little puzzle mystery mini-adventure involving buttons and levers and clues and family history. Consolidating the clues and thinking about their meaning and ultimately solving the mystery was extremely satisfying and rewarding. The Ultima series has always strived to create living, breathing, believable worlds that the player can really engage and lose themselves in. Shroud of the Avatar has achieved this beautifully. The game world is massive and diverse, with a huge collection of NPCs, many with their own personalities and quests for players to embark on. This effect is amplified by the surprisingly solid crafting system that allows players to create anything from armor to weapons, potions, furniture, and so on. It's a fairly simple system to get into. Find the recipe for a given item, gather the resources needed to craft it, and make your way to one of the game's many crafting pavilions to create it. Items can then be sold to NPCs or players. As I understand it, the highest level gear is actually crafted and not looted, which gives meaning and purpose to those who want to play as artisans. Lastly, the game appears to have learned from some of the mistakes made by its predecessor, Ultima Online. While both games shared a skill gain by doing system, Ultima Online's was heavily RNG based in the sense that you may or may not gain each time you use a skill. Shroud of the Avatar fixes this by ensuring that every use of the skill will improve it, even if only marginally at the higher levels. I found this to eliminate a lot of the frustration with training skills because you never feel like your time has been wasted, something that plagued UO. PvP is consensual this time around. With a simple switch you can flick on and off in a context menu which will allow you to attack other players or have them steal from you and whatnot. Ultima Online added a PvP area called Felucca, which was a carbon copy of the entire original world, which not only drove a wedge between players who predominantly PvP'd versus those who PvE'd, but as UO's population continued to dwindle, doubling the landmass led to an extremely empty feeling world where player interactions could be much less common than before. Shroud of the Avatar's approach to PvP should allow people to engage in PvP, or not, without creating a ghost town effect of players being spread out too thinly. Another area Shroud of the Avatar seems to have improved on is in the area of the player economy. Loot is a little more reasonable this time around. Ultima Online suffered from a runaway economy caused by excessive gold loot on monsters, which encouraged players to set up incredibly efficient and sometimes not entirely legal gold farming operations, which could pour obscene amounts of gold into the economy, driving up inflation. While I'm still fairly new to the game and could be wrong on this, Shroud of the Avatar doesn't appear to suffer from this issue, well, at least not yet, as the gold loot from enemies appears to be considerably lower on the whole. From what I can tell, loot is not instanced, and therefore in party play it is split up and not multiplied. This prevents a large group of players from effectively multiplying the gold output of a hunting area. One other issue Ultima Online suffered from was a deflated sense of world size, despite the incredible amount of map area present in the game, due to the ability of players to rapidly transport themselves across the world by horseback or teleportation. Players could mark runes to any spot in the game and then easily teleport back to that spot at will. You would literally have rune books with dozens of marked spots that you could instantly return to. For shorter distances, you'd have horses, or other mounts, that could speed you along the ground. Shroud of the Avatar doesn't appear to have mounts, though there is something going on with coconuts that I don't yet fully understand. Either way, the system of teleportation is quite a bit different. In Shroud of the Avatar, you can only bind to one place at a time. Your only other option for fast travel is teleporting to one of your friends, but of course their location can vary. In addition, the scrolls used to do so are quite a bit more costly by comparison. The overall effect is that getting around the world in Shroud of the Avatar is quite a bit harder, and therefore the world itself feels larger. At the time of this recording, I've heard that Portalarium already has a large expansion to the game's map planned. I find that extremely exciting because the sense of exploration that this game has created with its fantastic world building has been so good that I honestly can't wait to see what they come up with next. In closing, I'd just like to say this. Congratulations, Portalarium, on this incredible achievement. I've already spent a ton of time in Shroud of the Avatar, and I look forward to spending even more. I was a pretty hardcore Ultima Online player for a number of years, but I think I may have just found a suitable replacement. Well done. Shroud of the Avatar is, in my opinion, a worthy successor to Ultima Online, and I'll certainly be playing it from now on. If you haven't already checked it out, I'd highly recommend you at least download it and give it a go. After all, it's free. Well, I hope you've enjoyed the video and found it helpful. If you did, hit that like button and consider subscribing if you haven't already. But I think that's it for now, so as always guys, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.